On May 21, 1968, the nuclear attack submarine USS Scorpion was due to arrive in Norfolk, Virginia. 99 men were aboard. The Mediterranean patrol had gone smoothly. The crossing home was supposed to be the easy part.
The Scorpion was a skipjack-class boat, 252 feet long, nuclear-powered, capable of diving to nearly 1,000 feet. She had been commissioned in 1960. By 1968, she was 8 years old, experienced, and had logged thousands of miles without incident. Her commanding officer was Commander Francis Atwood Slattery. He had taken command just months earlier. The crew was a mix of veterans and younger men on their first extended deployment. They had been at sea since February, more than 3 months.
May 21 came. Norfolk waited. The Scorpion did not arrive. The Navy waited another day, then another. No signal, no emergency beacon, no wreckage on the surface. 99 men had simply failed to come home.
The last confirmed message from the Scorpion had been sent on May 21, 1968, southwest of the Azores Islands, roughly 250 miles from the Portuguese island chain. The boat had been running on the surface, or near it. The message was routine. No distress, no anomaly reported.
At the time of that transmission, the Scorpion was approximately 2,900 miles from Norfolk. At normal transit speed, she would have arrived in 6 days. The Navy calculated that window and marked it on a calendar. When that date passed with no word, the search began.
But searching for a submarine in the open Atlantic is not like searching for a ship. A submarine leaves no oil slick, no floating debris field, no dye marker visible from the air. If it went down intact, it would rest on the bottom, invisible, unreachable, cold.
The Navy searched anyway. Aircraft, surface ships, sonar arrays. They were looking for a vessel the size of a 2-story building somewhere in an ocean that covered millions of square miles. The Scorpion had vanished without giving anyone a direction to look.
5 months passed. Then, in October 1968, a naval research vessel using deep-sea cameras located the wreck of USS Scorpion on the floor of the Atlantic Ocean, at a depth of approximately 3,000 meters, or nearly 2 miles down.
The hull had not imploded cleanly. The sail structure, the tower that rises above the main hull, was largely intact, but the torpedo compartment at the bow had been catastrophically destroyed. The forward section of the submarine had been torn apart by whatever had killed her.
Photographs were taken. Measurements were recorded, the wreck was mapped, and then the Navy classified much of what it had found.
A formal court of inquiry was convened. Officers testified. Documents were compiled. Evidence was weighed. After months of deliberation, the court produced its conclusion, and that conclusion was 4 words that answered nothing. Cause could not be determined. 99 men, a destroyed torpedo compartment, a classified investigation, and an official verdict that left every real question open.
3 primary theories emerged from the investigation and from the decades of analysis that followed. Each one was grounded in physical evidence. Each one was also incomplete. The first theory, the Scorpion was killed by one of her own weapons. The Mark 37 torpedoes she carried used a hydrogen peroxide propellant system known to be unstable under certain conditions. If a torpedo had activated accidentally in its tube and begun running hot,
Standard procedure was to fire it away from the boat. But if that procedure failed, if the torpedo turned back, it would have detonated against the hull it had just left.
The acoustic record supported this. Hydrophone stations on the ocean floor, part of the SOSUS network, the sound surveillance system the Navy had built to track Soviet submarines, had recorded the Scorpion's final moments. Analysts at Columbia University examined those recordings. They heard what sounded like two distinct events: a smaller initial sound, followed by a larger catastrophic one. That pattern was consistent with a torpedo detonation followed by the implosion of the pressure hull.
The second theory, a battery explosion. The Scorpion's silver-zinc batteries were known to be degraded. Internal documents showed her crew had flagged maintenance concerns before the deployment. A battery failure at depth could have produced catastrophic results. The third theory has never been officially entertained by the United States Navy, but it has never fully disappeared either: Soviet action. In 1968, the Cold War was at one of its most dangerous pressure points. The Soviet Navy was active in the Atlantic, and the Scorpion had been operating in waters where Soviet submarines were also present.
The acoustic analysis by Gordon Hamilton at Columbia University pointed strongly toward the own torpedo theory. His work was detailed, technically rigorous, and supported by the physical evidence at the wreck site. But his findings were classified for years, withheld not just from the public, but from the families of the crew.
Portions of the Court of Inquiry were declassified over the following decades, but not all of them. As of today, certain documents related to the loss of USS Scorpion remain sealed. The Navy has not explained what those documents contain or why they cannot be released. The families of the 99 men received official condolences and official silence in roughly equal measure.
What is certain, the torpedo compartment was destroyed. The boat went down in deep water. The cause was violent and sudden. There was no slow flooding, no time to send a distress call, no chance to escape. 99 men died in seconds or in minutes in complete darkness 2 miles below the surface of the Atlantic. And the full account of why has never been made public. 1968 was, by any measure, a catastrophic year for submarine forces around the world. The Scorpion was not the first submarine lost that year, and she was not the last. In January 1968, the Israeli submarine INS Dakar disappeared in the eastern Mediterranean with 69 men aboard. Her wreck would not be found for 31 years at 3,000 meters depth off the coast of Cyprus.
In late January 1968, the French submarine Minerve vanished in the Mediterranean near Toulon with 52 men aboard. Her wreck was finally located in 2019, 51 years after she went down.
In March 1968, the Soviet Golf II ballistic missile submarine K-129 sank in the North Pacific with 98 men aboard. The Soviets could not find her. The CIA secretly located and partially recovered her in 1974 in an operation so sensitive that the ship used to do it, the Glomar Explorer, was disguised as a deep-sea mining vessel.
4 submarines, 4 nations, 4 separate oceans, all in the same calendar year. The combined death toll was over 300 men.
No coordination, no common cause, no shared technology failure. Just 1968, the year the ocean collected submarines the way it sometimes collects ships, without explanation and without apology. The Scorpion's sealed files sit alongside those of the Dakar, the Minerve, and the K-129 in the archive of things governments have decided the public does not need to know.
The wreck of USS Scorpion has been visited several times since its discovery. The Navy conducted a thorough photographic survey. Researchers have analyzed the debris field, the scatter pattern of the hull sections, the position of the sail relative to the main wreck.
The torpedo compartment destruction is consistent with the own torpedo theory, but consistent with is not the same as proven by. The acoustic record is consistent with that theory too, but acoustic data from 1968, recorded by hydrophone arrays that were not designed for forensic precision, carries significant margin of error. The Scorpion could have been killed by her own weapon. She could have been destroyed by a battery explosion. She could have been attacked. The physical evidence, even after decades of analysis, does not eliminate any of these possibilities. Ed Offley, who investigated the Scorpion's loss for years and published a book on the subject in 2007, concluded that the most likely cause was Soviet action, but that conclusion remains contested by other researchers and has never been accepted by the Navy. 99 men went to the bottom of the Atlantic in May 1968. The documents that might explain why remain locked away. The families of those men are still waiting for an answer that may never come. 99 men, a classified verdict, sealed files that may never open. The Scorpion went down all at once, a single event, a single location, a single moment of violence at the bottom of the Atlantic. But not every mystery arrives as a catastrophe. Some accumulate, slowly, one piece at a time, washing ashore over years on the quiet beaches of the Pacific Northwest, asking a question no one has yet been able to answer. August 20, 2007, Jedediah Island, British Columbia. A 12-year-old girl was walking along the shoreline when she found a running shoe. A size 12 Adidas, right foot. It was still laced. It was still filled. Inside the shoe was a human foot, detached at the ankle, still wearing a sock. The British Columbia Coroner's Service was notified. Within weeks, it would receive a second foot, then a third, then a fourth, each one in a running shoe, each one washed ashore along the Salish Sea, the inland waterway connecting the Strait of Georgia, Puget Sound, and the waters between Vancouver Island and the British Columbia mainland. By 2024, the count had reached 21 confirmed human feet, all recovered from the same general region, all inside athletic shoes. The cases span 17 years. The question they collectively raise has never been answered. Why are so many detached human feet washing ashore in this specific stretch of water? The forensic explanation for why feet, and specifically feet in shoes, is straightforward, and it removes one layer of horror while adding another. When a human body enters the water and begins to decompose, the soft tissue connecting bones eventually breaks down. In cold Pacific Northwest waters, this process is slow, taking months, sometimes years, but it is inevitable. The ankle joint, where the foot connects to the leg, is one of the first areas to separate. It is not a violent process. It requires no cutting, no external force. The body simply comes apart at its joints. The shoe matters because modern athletic shoes are built with foam midsoles designed to provide buoyancy during running. That same foam, it turns out, keeps a decomposing foot afloat after the ankle joint has separated. The foot, sealed inside its sneaker, rises to the surface and drifts with the current.
This explains the mechanics. It does not explain why so many feet are drifting in the Salish Sea. It does not explain who these people were, or how they entered the water, or why so many of them remain unidentified. Of the 21 feet recovered through 2024, investigators have been able to identify the source in some cases. Several were matched to individuals who had died by suicide, jumping from bridges over the waterway. Several were matched to victims of accidental drowning, people who had fallen from boats or from shore.
1 foot, recovered in 2011, was eventually linked to a victim of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, a person whose body had apparently traveled through ocean currents for years before a single foot came to rest on a British Columbia beach.
These identifications, while tragic, carry a kind of closure. They confirm the forensic explanation. They confirm that the feet belong to real people with real histories. But many of the feet have never been matched to any missing person, any drowning report, or any identified individual. DNA analysis has been conducted. Shoe size and model have been documented and compared against missing persons databases. In case after case, the result is the same. The foot came ashore, was recovered, was examined, and then led nowhere. The people those feet belong to have no names in this investigation. They are recorded only as case numbers. The Salish Sea is not an unusually dangerous body of water. It is heavily traveled: ferries, fishing vessels, recreational boats, cargo ships. Drowning deaths occur there every year, as they do in any major waterway. British Columbia and Washington State both have robust missing persons databases.
What investigators have not been able to explain is the concentration. 21 feet from the same region over 17 years is a rate that has no parallel anywhere else in the world. Other coastlines produce isolated cases of decomposed remains washing ashore. No other coastline produces this pattern, this specific item, this specific region, this specific frequency. Dr. Gail Anderson, a forensic entomologist at Simon Fraser University who has worked on many of these cases, has consistently pushed back against the more dramatic theories. The feet are not evidence of mass murder. There is no cutting tool involved. The separations are biological, not mechanical. The answer is more mundane and, in its own way, more disturbing. There are simply a great many unaccounted for bodies in the Salish Sea. The question is how they got there and who they are. Not every foot recovered in the Salish Sea has been genuine. Several were hoaxes, animal bones inserted into shoes, or dried animal paws staged to look human. Each one triggered a police response before being identified as false. The hoaxes added a layer of noise to an already difficult investigation. They consumed resources. They delayed attention to genuine cases. And they suggested something else, that by a certain point, enough people knew the pattern well enough to exploit it. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the Clallam County Sheriff's Office in Washington have both maintained active files on the recovered feet. The British Columbia Coroner's Service issues updates when new feet are found. The count is maintained as a running record. As of the time of this recording, The most recent confirmed foot was recovered within the past few years. The investigation remains open. The Salish Sea has not stopped delivering its slow, steady, unexplained inventory of the dead.
21 feet over 17 years. Some identified, many not. The forensic explanation accounts for the how: decomposition, buoyancy, current. It does not account for the scale, the concentration, or the anonymity of so many of the remains.
The Salish Sea connects two countries, passes through some of North America's most populated coastline, and is monitored by 2 national coast guards, multiple police agencies, and a constant flow of maritime traffic. People enter it and disappear from it at a rate that the official record cannot fully explain. Some of those people chose to disappear. Some died by accident. Some may have been victims of violence, though investigators have found no evidence of that in the feet themselves. But the unidentified cases, the ones that led nowhere, that matched no database, that correspond to no known missing person, those remain truly open. Somewhere, there are families who do not know that a piece of the person they lost has already been found.
The foot was recovered. The shoe was catalogued. The DNA was filed, and no one came to claim it.
The Salish Sea accumulated its dead slowly, 1 foot at a time, over 17 years, each one a separate event with a separate story. But the next case happened in a single night. No accumulation, no slow process. One geological event, one invisible force, and 1,746 people dead before sunrise. Not at sea, on land, in a valley in Cameroon that had never been considered dangerous at all.
Lake Nyos sits in the northwest highlands of Cameroon, West Africa, at an elevation of roughly 1,000 meters. It is a crater lake formed inside the caldera of an extinct volcano. The water is deep, reaching nearly 200 meters at its lowest point. The surface is calm. The lake is blue. To any visitor in August 1986, it would have looked entirely peaceful.
Beneath that surface, a different process had been running for years, possibly decades. The volcanic rock underlying the lake continuously released carbon dioxide into the water at the bottom. Under the pressure of the water column above it, that CO2 dissolved into the deep water and accumulated, the same principle by which carbonation is held in a sealed bottle.
By August 1986, the deep water of Lake Nyos held an enormous quantity of dissolved CO2. Scientists who analyzed the lake afterward estimated that approximately 1.6 cubic kilometers of gas had been stored in the water column.
The lake had become, in effect, a sealed container under pressure. The question was not whether it would eventually release that gas. The question was when. On the evening of August 21, 1986, something disturbed the deep water of Lake Nyos. The precise trigger has never been definitively identified. The leading candidates are a small landslide along the lake's inner wall, a minor seismic event, or a temperature shift in the water column that caused an upwelling of cold CO2-saturated water. Whatever triggered it, the result was a limnic eruption, a phenomenon so rare that Lake Nyos would become one of only 2 confirmed cases in recorded history. When the deep water rose, the pressure on the dissolved CO2 decreased. The gas came out of solution, the same way carbonation explodes from a shaken bottle when the cap is removed. But at Lake Nyos, the scale was not a bottle. It was 1.6 cubic kilometers of gas releasing simultaneously. A column of water and gas erupted from the lake surface. Estimates suggest it may have reached 80 meters high. The water sprayed across the surrounding area. And then the gas, carbon dioxide, heavier than air, invisible, completely odorless, began to flow downhill.
It moved like water. It followed the valleys. It rolled silently through the darkness toward the villages below.
Carbon dioxide does not burn. It has no color. It has no smell. At normal atmospheric concentrations, it is harmless. It is the gas humans exhale with every breath. But at concentrations above a certain threshold, it displaces oxygen. A person breathing air that is 30% carbon dioxide will lose consciousness within seconds.
The cloud that flowed down from Lake Nyos on the night of August 21, 1986, was not 30% carbon dioxide. In the valleys immediately below the lake, concentrations were estimated at nearly 100%. The villages in the path of the cloud, Nyos, Kam, Cha, Subum, and others, were asleep. The gas arrived without sound, without warning, without any sensory signal that might have woken anyone. 1,700 people died. The count was made afterward by survivors who had been far enough from the lake to escape the highest concentrations, or who had been on elevated ground above the gas layer.
3,500 cattle died. Every bird in the affected area died. Every insect. The gas was indiscriminate and total. It killed everything that required oxygen within its radius, and it left the landscape otherwise undamaged. No fire, no blast, no structural destruction. Just silence, and then more silence.
The village of Nyos itself had approximately 800 residents on the night of August 21. When rescue workers reached it in the days following the disaster, they found 6 survivors. Those 6 people described waking up, sometimes hours after the event, to find everyone around them dead. Neighbors, family members, animals, all dead in the positions they had been in when the gas reached them. No injuries, no signs of struggle, simply stopped. Some survivors reported smelling something, described variously as gunpowder, rotten eggs, or simply something unfamiliar, just before losing consciousness. Most reported nothing. They went to sleep, and they woke up in a world where almost everyone they knew was dead. One survivor, a woman named Ephraim Che, had been on slightly higher ground. The gas layer had not quite reached her elevation. She described regaining consciousness, looking down toward the village, and seeing nothing moving. The rescue operation was complicated by the fact that the lake itself remained dangerous. The water was still heavily saturated with CO2. The risk of a second, smaller eruption was real. Workers approached carefully, not knowing what had caused the first event or when it might recur.
The scientific explanation for what happened at Lake Nyos, the limnic eruption, the CO2 saturation, the density flow of heavy gas through the valleys, was established relatively quickly after the event. Geologists George Kling and colleagues published their analysis in Science magazine in 1987. The mechanism was understood.
The trigger was not. Seismograph stations in the region did not record a significant earthquake on August 21, 1986. The landslide hypothesis is supported by some evidence of disturbed sediment, but is not confirmed. The temperature shift theory is plausible, but also unconfirmed.
Something caused the deep water of Lake Nyos to overturn on that specific night. That something has never been identified with certainty.
More importantly, the lake has refilled with CO2 since 1986. A degassing pipe was installed in 2001, pulling saturated water from the deep lake and releasing the CO2 gradually at the surface. A second pipe was added later. Scientists monitor the lake continuously.
But the lake is still there. The volcano beneath it is not extinct. And the trigger for the 1986 eruption remains unknown.
Lake Nyos is one of only 2 lakes in recorded history known to have produced a limnic eruption. The other is Lake Manoon, also in Cameroon, which killed 37 people in 1984, 2 years before Nyos, and an event that was not fully understood until after Nyos made the phenomenon undeniable.
The degassing pipes at Nyos reduce the risk. They do not eliminate it. The lake continues to receive CO2 from the volcanic rock below. If the pipes fail, or if the inflow accelerates, the gas will accumulate again.
Geologists have identified several other deep volcanic lakes around the world, in Central Africa, in Southeast Asia, that carry similar risk profiles. Most have no degassing infrastructure. Most sit near populated areas. 1,746 people died on August 21, 1986, because a lake released a gas that no one could see, smell, or hear. The exact reason it released that gas on that night remains, technically, unknown.
Lake Nyos left bodies, 1,746 of them, counted, identified where possible, buried. The disaster was invisible in its mechanism, but concrete in its evidence. The final case in this group offers something different and, in its own way, more unsettling. No bodies, no distress call. A ship found in perfect order, with its lifeboat still attached in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico, completely empty.
February 1940. The Gulf of Mexico, approximately 200 miles southwest of St. Augustine, Florida. A United States Coast Guard vessel on routine patrol came across a schooner drifting without power, sails furled, moving with the current, showing no signs of distress.
The vessel was the Gloria Colita, 75 feet long, American flagged, a typical working schooner of the era. The Coast Guard approached and hailed her. No response. They came alongside and boarded. What they found was a ship in good order. The sails were properly furled, not torn, not tangled, not left half deployed as they might be if something sudden had happened mid-operation. The rigging was intact. The hull showed no damage. The personal effects of the crew were still aboard. Food and fresh water were present in adequate quantities. The ship was not in distress. The ship was not damaged. The ship was simply and completely empty. Empty. And unlike many ghost ship cases before it, the lifeboat was still there, still secured in its mount. The lifeboat changes everything. In most cases of abandoned vessels, the Carol A. Deering, the Mary Celeste, the Joyita, the lifeboat is missing. Its absence suggests, at minimum, that the crew made a conscious decision to leave. They boarded a smaller vessel and departed. Whether that departure was voluntary, forced, or panicked is unknown, but the act of leaving left a trace.
The Gloria Colita's lifeboat was still attached, still secured, not deployed, not lowered, not in the water. If the crew left the Gloria Colita in February 1940, they did not leave by lifeboat. They either had access to another vessel, which implies the involvement of a second ship, or they went into the water directly. Neither explanation produces a comfortable picture. The Coast Guard documented the lifeboat's presence carefully. It was one of the most anomalous details in an already deeply anomalous scene. A crew that abandons a ship without using the lifeboat is a crew that either chose not to use it or did not have the chance. Standard procedure when a vessel is found adrift is to check the ship's papers, identify the owner, identify the crew, and cross-reference against any reported departures or distress calls. The Coast Guard attempted this with the Gloria Colita. The process did not go smoothly. The ship's records were contradictory. The ownership documentation was unclear. The crew manifest, the official list of who was aboard when she departed, could not be definitively established. Some sources suggest the Gloria Colita may have been stolen, or at minimum that her chain of ownership and registration was not clean. No port reported her departure. No captain had filed a formal sailing plan. No one contacted the Coast Guard to report the Gloria Colita overdue, because apparently no one knew with certainty that she had sailed at all. This made the investigation structurally difficult. To find missing people, you need to know who the people were. To know who the people were, you need records. The Gloria Colita's records were incomplete, contradictory, or in some cases, simply absent. The investigation was starting from a position of near total informational zero. The theories for what happened to the crew of the Gloria Colita break into three categories, none of which can be confirmed. The first, piracy. The Gulf of Mexico in 1940 was not a lawless sea, but it was large enough, and the waters south of Florida and east of Mexico were remote enough that a well-organized crew could board a vessel, remove its occupants, and disappear. The intact state of the ship, not looted, not vandalized, argues against casual piracy, but not against something more purposeful. The second, a sudden atmospheric event. Waterspouts, intense, localized columns of rotating water, can form with almost no warning in the Gulf. A waterspout striking the deck could conceivably throw everyone overboard simultaneously, leaving the ship structurally intact and the crew in the water. But the furled sails argue against this. A sudden violent event typically leaves rigging in disorder. The third, something connected to the ship's unclear ownership. If the Gloria Colita was operating outside normal channels, carrying something or someone it should not have been, then its crew's disappearance may have been less accidental than it appeared. The Gloria Colita was found at the southern edge of what would later be labeled the Bermuda Triangle, the loose geographic region between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico that accumulates, in popular imagination, an unusual number of maritime disappearances. Charles Berlitz included the Gloria Colita in his 1974 book on the Bermuda Triangle. Researchers like Gian Quasar have written about it more recently. Its position on that conceptual map has made it a recurring entry in lists of unexplained maritime events. The Bermuda Triangle as a cause explains nothing. The Gulf of Mexico sees heavy maritime traffic, frequent severe weather, and the full range of human activity, legal and otherwise. A ship disappearing there is not evidence of any geographic anomaly. It is evidence of an ocean large enough to hide its secrets, and a case thin enough in documentary evidence to remain permanently open.
The Gloria Colita was towed to port. Her condition was documented. The investigation was conducted. And then, like so many cases in maritime history, it reached the edge of what the evidence could support, and stopped.
No crew was ever found. No bodies were recovered. No survivor came forward with an account. No second vessel was identified as having been in the area. No explanation was established.
The ship was in perfect order. The lifeboat was untouched. The food and water were still aboard, and whoever had been sailing her had vanished so completely that even their names could not be confirmed.
The Gloria Colita goes into the record as found adrift. Crew unknown. Cause undetermined.
4 cases, 4 different shapes of the same problem.
USS Scorpion went down in May 1968 with 99 men and a destroyed torpedo compartment, and the documents that might explain why remain sealed in a Navy archive more than 5 decades later. The families of those men received a verdict that contained 4 words and no answers. Cause could not be determined.
The Salish Sea has been returning its dead, 1 foot at a time, in running shoes since 2007. 21 feet over 17 years. The forensic explanation is sound. The scale is not. Somewhere in the cold water between British Columbia and Washington State, there are unaccounted for people whose identities no database has matched, whose families may not know they are gone.
Lake Nyos released 1.6 cubic kilometers of carbon dioxide on the night of August 21, 1986, and killed 1,746 people before sunrise. The mechanism is understood. The trigger, the specific event that caused the deep water to overturn on that specific night, has never been identified. The lake is still there. The gas is still accumulating. The Gloria Colita was found in February 1940 with its lifeboat still attached, its food still aboard, its sails properly furled, and no one on deck. The crew had no confirmed names. Their departure had no confirmed date. Their fate has no confirmed explanation. The Scorpion's files are sealed. The Salish Sea count is still rising. The Nyos trigger is still unknown. The Gloria Colita's crew still has no names. 4 open files. No closing dates.